Good morning to you as well. The situation regarding Hurricane Melissa, particularly the catastrophic impact on Jamaica and the threat to Cuba, indicates catastrophic effects with widespread flooding, structural failure, power outages, and isolated communities. The question of is safety complex, as the immediate danger has likely passed, but the environment is currently a disaster zone with severe threats to life and safety from the aftermath. Here is an advisory to the government and people. Hurricane Melissa Aftermath Crisis Caribbean 2025. Immediate crisis assuring catastrophic and ensuring basic survival. Immediately safety concern in late October 2025. The primary threats to life and safety immediately following the passenger of vessels, but the cascading failures of in 1. Structural and environmental hazards, total structural failure and debris. Widespread reports of roofs being torn off and total structural failure, especially in older or less resilient buildings, mean sharp debris and fallen power lines pose immediate life threatening dangerous in the streets and even inside damaged homes. Landslides and rock falls with rain saturated. Catastrophic landslide or a massive threat cutting off entire communities, bearing homes and making immediate access for rescue teams impossible. Contaminated floods, water, massive storm surge up to 13 feet reported on the southern coast. And flash flooding have submerged areas like the parish of St. Elizabeth underwater. These waters are contaminated with chemicals, debris, and carcasses infections. Displaced wildlife officials in Kingston have issued warnings to beware of states due to the flooding having an unusual threat. Critical infrastructure failure, widespread power, 1,030,000 customers have been reported without electricity. This is not just an inconvenience for food, medicine, and the immediate shutdown of most communication services. Communication blackouts, downed power and communication lines have caused a sharp decline in internet, severely isolating communities. This makes it nearly impossible for people to call for help, for central command to get damaged assessment, and for families to confirm loved ones are safe. Access and logistics collapse. Roads are universally blocked by fallen trees. Utility challenge of accessing cut off communities to deliver water, medical aid and conduct and rescue is currently the single greatest logistical safety barrier. Third, health and humanitarian crisis. Hospitals, including Black River Hospital, have been structurally damaged, lost power or been forced to evacuate patients. The exciting capacity to treat the surge of serious is severely compromised. Waterborne disease risk the destruction of sanitation systems combined with standing contaminated floodwaters creates an extremely high risk for outbreaks of waterborne diseases, e.g. cholera, leptospirosis. Once the immediate food and water scarcity, access to clean drinking water is critical, with officials warnings that psychosocial trauma, the sheer scale of the creations, creates a high need for immediate psychosocial support, especially for the most groups. 4. Security concerns, looting and public order with power outages and the security areas is a major concern. The presence of police order, shelter overcrowding, safety. While thousands have used the shelters, maintaining safety, hygiene and dignity in society. In short, for anyone in the affected areas, the immediate safety ODPEM official of disaster prepared emergency management can confirm primary roads are cleared and global response, mobilizing immediate relief for Hurricane Melissa victims. The activation of international relief mechanisms is critical to bridging the gap between local resources and disaster. Several key organizations, nations and regional bodies are immediately deploying resources to address the urgent safety concerns in the Jamaica. 1. Humanitarian aid and rescue operations. United Nations and agencies, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs OCHA has initiated its flash appeal for the Caribbean region. The World Food Programme is rapid development units and pre-positioned food stock from regional hubs, likely Barbados. Immediate food scarcity and logistics challenges posed by blocked roads. International search and rescue SAR, specialized urban disaster assistance response team, DA and European Union civil protection mechanism are being their priority is finding and extracting survivors in collaborative threats of entrapment, injury. Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, the International Federation, released emergency funds Their local and international teams are focused on providing non-food items like tarpaulins and establishing temporary shelters and first aid points to mitigate the risk of exposure and disease. 2. Medical and public health support. Pan America Health Organization WHO is coordinated the deployment of emergency medical teams to support the compromised hospitals. Their focus is on setting up field hospitals to address trauma and preparing for mass vaccinations campaigns to prevent outbreaks of waterborne immediate safety concerns. Medical supplies and logistics. Large supply in bulk supplies of clean water, water purification tablets, essentially medicines and surgical equipment directly to secure airports like Kingston, Manly International. Third, regional and bilateral support. CARICOM, CARICOM, Caribbean Community. The regional body has activated its Caribbean, is acting as the primary coordination hub, directing resource, specialized personnel and coordinating efficiently. Partner nations immediately pledges of military and technical assistance are flowing in, particularly for engineering and heavy equipment. Crews and heavy machinery are being airlifted to the naval assets. Relief ships from countries like the US, UK and Canada are being diverted to provide offshore medical care, water and clean water and logistics staging. This concerted efforts aims to stabilize the immediate crisis within the first 72 exposure and isolation that pose the greatest threats post landfall. Very pity. Hurricane Melissa urgent preparedness for Cuba 2025. The current threat is immediately and life-threatening. The following points emphasize the critical questions and action. The catastrophic damage. 1. Immediate evacuation and shelter protocols. Evacuation compliance of 5 million residents in the vulnerable coastal landmass Santiago de Cuba, Guantanamo and Holguin. Strictly delay. Shelter capacity and security are all public shelters with food, water and medical supplies, ensuring capacity is not compromised by COVID-19. Advisory to government and pupil. Questions 1 to 5. How quickly can specialized search and rescue teams every isolated community cut off by flooding and landslides? Is the full casualty count being tracked transparently, and what is the plan for communicating this devastating news respectfully? Are there sufficient medical personnel and supplies to severely damaged coastal hospitals? Can emergency logistics successfully bypass impossible roads to deliver immediate food, clean water and shelter materials? What is the government's definitive timeline for restoring basic communications and power in the most severely impacted parishes? How will we prevent outbreaks of waterborne systems? Are all major water treatment facilities secured or communities? How can the general public safety report offline? What is the immediate plan to secure damaged critical infrastructure like bridges, major roads and primary power substations? Are the mandatory evacuation orders still in effect? Shelters. How is the government coordinating with international aid, UN, Red Cross to avoid duplication and maximize efficiency? Are temporary dignified shelters being established for the structural failure? What measures are in place to address the profound psychosocial trauma experienced by survivors, especially children and the elderly? How can we ensure price gouging does not exploit vulnerable families seeking essential materials? Is there a clear protocol for the safe to prevent further environmental and health risk? For those in Cuba, have the massive evacuation efforts of the path of the projected life-threatening storm surge? How will authorities address potential areas left vacant and damaged after the storm's passage? Are the nation's remaining medical supplies? What specific resources are allocated to quickly assist bread basket and avert a food crisis? How will the government provide swift financial assistance like emergency cash transfers to the most vulnerable families who have lost everything? Has an international appeal for immediate relief officially launched, clearly outlining the most urgent material needs? How can citizens volunteer their time or resources safely without impending professional historical sites that may be vulnerable to collapse or damage? Are emergency school feeding programs immediately operational? How do we assure the world, especially potential welcomed long-term solution building back storage and climate resilience advisory to government and people? Question 26 to 50. Will the new rebuilding standards mandate construction that withstand future category 5 hurricane force winds and storm surges? How can the government accelerate the process of establishing sovereign risk insurance and contingents credit to ensure rapid financial liquidity after the next disaster? Should national policy prioritize decentralized critical infrastructure, power, water, communication away from vulnerable coastal zones? Will there be a national review of building codes strictly enforcing the use of concrete and elevated foundations? Is there a long-term plan to aggressively reforest mountains areas to naturally mitigate the devastating impact of future landslides and flash floods? How can the tourism sector be diversified and made more resilient to minimize the catastrophic national economic impact of future storm-related closures? Should the national budget reallocate significant funds towards climate change adaptation measures even at the expense of projects? What is the comprehensive multi-year strategy? Highlands entire power grid including a faster transition cables? How will the government and international partners invest in research to develop more resilient salt tolerant local crops for the future? Should community-based disaster committees be empowered with more resources and training become the crew? First, how can the public be incentivized or required to purchase personal hurricane insurance to reduce the burden on government relief funds? Will there be new legislation to protect our property laws? What reforms are necessary in the national shelter system to ensure better security, dignity? How can the education system be reformed to embed climate and hurricane into the national curriculum from a young age? Will new urban planning initiatives restrict building in the most dangerously exposed low-lying coastal areas? How can the current country leverage its international partnership to access climate finance and technical expertise for sustainable rebuilding? Is the government committed to a transparent, auditable process for all disaster relief funds to ensure their shares? What and farmers to quickly regain their livelihoods and jumpstart local economies? Should the nation disaster preparedness system be officially upgraded to? How will the experience of hurricane shift in land use and coastal development moving forwards? Can a national stockpile of all purchase? What investment is needed to ensure every school and community center can function as a fully equipped resilient emergency shelters? How can a dedicated easy to use digital platform be established for citizens to track and influence recovery spending and progress? Are there plans to implement a nationwide public alert system that is not dependent on a functional power or cell network? As we mourn the past and rebuild the present, how will we collectively ensure that the lessons of Melissa save lives in the inevitable storms of the future? Please like, subscribe and comment. Another video, just 2 minutes, art touchable video is there. Please see that. In late October, Ukraine Melissa impact.
In late October 2025, Hurricane Melissa emerged as a powerful covering Cuba, prompting mass evacuations and emergency preparations. There are extensive efforts and international support to restore essential services and ensure community safety.
Thank you, friend. Another images, flood images are there. You will find the what that hurricane approaches Cuba. Jamaica recovers now. PT. Post-hurricane tips. Staying safe, Jamaica. Escape wildfire now. Earthquake survival guide. Oh, earthquake also. Escape wildfires now. Survive the flood. Earthquake survival guide. Escape wildfires now. Survival. Caribbean will rebuild. Rebuilding begins now. After the storm. Hope after the storm. Jamaica's fight back. Island underwater. Relief efforts mobilize. Melissa victims need you. PT. Immediate hurricane relief. Cuba prepares now. Surviving Hurricane Melissa. Cuba prepares now. This is pity also, sad also. We are sympathies. Now please like, subscribe. Thank you, my dear friends. Very sad news. Okay, we will meet tomorrow next video.